Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. This is Weldie sitting with Andrew, recapping a lot of business to kind of attend to here for this weekend as we end the unofficial first half of the season, both on the men's and the women's side. A lot to talk about, both good and bad. I think for mostly the men. A lot of good for the women, but we'll get to that in the latter half of the show. We'll lead off with the men here. The men end up winning the first game by a score of 4-1 in Omaha in the NCHC Riveria, and then tie 2-2 in the second game. They dropped the shootout in typical shootout fashion, but judging by Omaha's actual record in overtimes, I was actually pretty happy that the fact that we were able to salvage a tie and actually complete that 5 minutes, especially with how that game definitely went. But I suppose we should start with game one, Friday. Now, I watched most of the replay on the Friday game. I had a company event. So I'm going to actually let Andrew kind of take the lead on it, and I'll give you what my thoughts were about the game as well. I'll kind of chime in, but from what I saw. But as far as the game as a whole on Friday, again, 4-1 win, Kupka with the empty netter. There we had Werner Miettinen, the Omega pops in a power play goal. Rosborough crashes the net. After Barrett Hall crashed the net, Anhorn gets one as well. Overall, your thoughts on Friday's game?
It's a good win. It was a bit of a weird game. I mean, you had 3 goals total that were scored on a delayed penalty. So the Randall goal for Omaha, and then the that Hall goal, or Rosborough.
Rosborough.
It would have gone in had he not tapped it in as well. But that goal, which Hall had forced the penalty, which led to that goal, and then the Anhorn goal in the third period, that was on a delayed penalty for the major for Omaha. But none of those 3 ensuing power plays, including that major, led to any further goals, which is weird.
I definitely will talk about this power play because
it's not good.
It's not good. I mean, if we still had Bob, it's definitely accused the
not great, Bob.
Incredibly frustrating to watch, and I don't get the sentiment. One of the things that I don't understand in sports, 2 things I don't understand in sports, just 2. Everything else I get. 2 things I don't understand. 1, why is it in football it's always way easier to score late in the game? I don't get it. I don't get why defense decide to just be dumb for that 2 minutes. It's like the only part of the sport where it's easier to score when you know what the opponent is trying to do. Doesn't make any sense to me. And then 2, I don't get the mentality in hockey of it's a 5-minute major, so I can let my foot off the gas because I have 5 minutes to try to score. It should be the exact opposite. You have the ability to score more on a 5-minute major, so you should try harder. Your goal should be to pot 2 in at least in a 5-minute major, and everything was just lackadaisical and absolutely atrocious on this power play. Something has to change because, I mean, I know we got, Miettinen and Werner's goal was on the power play, but I mean, that was off the face-off, and it was
like 8 seconds in. It was a great start to the power play for the weekend. But...
Yeah. But as far as, aside from that, which was more of a lucky bounce than anything, we just had 0 momentum, and it was just everything we tried to do just looked absolutely terrible.
Yeah, that was certainly not great. I mean, 5-on-5, I thought St. Cloud was clearly the better team. Friday, I wasn't particularly impressed with Omaha. As I've mentioned before, I typically
Yep.
never am all that
You're typically not
impressed. Yeah, I think
So,
I mean, a win and a tie, I'm really not going to complain, especially on the road. I don't. I feel like you did have a chance to sweep them this weekend. So it is slightly disappointing, but 4-1 win. I think that they could have, especially if they were to convert on some more power play opportunities, that game could have been closer to a rout. And it was a little discouraging that they couldn't pull away when I thought, like I said, clearly were the more skilled team that game. But yeah, I mean, they did have a bit of adversity there. I thought they started the game quite well, outplaying them for the first 10 minutes or so. But then it's Omaha that gets that first goal with Randall, as I mentioned, with the delayed penalty to Anhorn to boot.
Well, and then that was also a situation where we had 3 different players that were able to clear the puck, and they failed to. Anhort had a chance. Lutke had a chance, which we haven't really talked about Lutke a lot this year. And I think maybe we should kind of bring it up that, as much as Anhorn it was frustrating at the start of the season, and I've come around to him a little bit more than I think
he's been improving. Yeah.
I think Lutke has been borderline subpar. I don't think he's been very good. I'm at the point where, I would probably trust a healthy Reiners over a Lutke right now. Or get Ewert some time, something along those lines. Obviously, Lutke is going to play and whatnot, but it's been a little bit frustrating that I just expected maybe a little bit more out of him, and it hasn't come this season. And then Molinar also had a chance, and that Molinar's turnover was the last one that ended up, eventually shepherding the puck over to Randall to beat Bassey.
Yeah, I'm a frustrating sequence there. Not sure if I would.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little surprised with your take on Litke. We got to be really careful this weekend because Omaha had a couple of Lutkes themselves. So we're talking about Josh here. I don't know. I've been generally impressed with what Litke's been doing this year. Just for my recollection, which obviously is not the most reliable, but I don't remember me sort of yelling at the TV about something he did this year. But I mean, I don't think he's ever going to be a star player or anything like that. But I think he's been fairly solid. But willing to disagree. I think that my opinion about Peart isn't widely held. So we can agree to disagree on both of those if you'd like. You probably like Peart a little bit more than I do, and I probably like Lutke more than you do, which is fair.
I don't even say that I would like Peart more than you do. I don't know. I appreciate Peart's upside a lot more. I guess, but he does have like a lot of butt clenching moments that really scare me.
Here we are again, 4-1 win, and we're picking on the players that we thought played the worst. We are kind of spoiled here, but as we mentioned, the power play failed to really put Omaha away. Now, again, I thought Bassey played pretty well. I mean, we're gonna transition here into the Saturday game eventually, but because the game was fairly tight, he had to make some key saves there. And as it turns out, at least according to the KVSC guys, it was a tweak of an injury that forced Posh to play on Saturday.
Was it? I did not hear that.
According to the KVSC guys, I was all sort of racking my brains as far as like why would you suddenly give Posh his first start here? And
yeah, it was a weird time. Even for me, who's been calling for some kind of a rotation or just, but this I thought was a weird time to do it. So a tweak of an injury.
I don't know what kind of injury that was, and so not trying to put 2 and 2 together here, but like because the game was closer on Friday and it required him to be sort of in the game, maybe he was selling out to an extent where he put himself in harm's way. I'm not sure, but I don't think those two are necessarily related. they don't need to be. But as we're going to get into the Saturday game, we can talk about Posh. How did you think that Bassey played on Friday? Because I thought he had some good saves.
I thought he played excellent. Yeah, I thought, yeah, like you said, for how I thought St. Cloud really kind of controlled the game and played better than Omaha. Like, yeah, we did let them hang around. We did let them get a couple more chances than we probably should have. But Bassey, really stuck to it and I thought did really well. I wanted to kind of go back. This is Saul Quist did return. And I think it was Saturday he had that breakaway. But I thought, in his return, I thought he looked pretty good. Kind of get back into the swing of things. I heard, really a lot of the young guys I was really impressed with. I thought Ryman made excellent plays all weekend. I thought Gross made some good plays as well. I felt their names kind of all over, or I heard their names pretty much all over the broadcast both nights. Just always making plays, always around the puck. So I've been impressed with them. Rosborough, I know he got credit for that for his first goal on the Barrett Hall, getting tripped and then going into the net, which, I was going through as I was looking at it, I was happy that they called that a goal, judging by the rule book. Because if you look at the rule book when it comes to like the net dislodgement, and you can, I know some Omaha fans were upset because the net was off or anything along those lines, but judging by net dislodgement, and I think we had another situation like this last year or 2 years ago or something along those lines where it was something very similar where the net kind of popped off, but would have been an easy goal, if the pegs were down, and it wasn't the SCSU person kind of committing the foul. Rule 26.2 if you're interested. But yeah, other than that, I thought Rosborough was okay all weekend. I know he got a lot of praise on Twitter. Yeah, I thought he was okay. Overall, I could kind of take or leave his performance, but happy obviously that he got that goal.
Yeah, and obviously setting that play up, we've mentioned it with Barrett Hall. I thought he had his best weekend in a while. He had sort of been quiet the last few month or so, let's say, but especially on Friday, I thought was dynamic. That play where he's coming into the net, I believe it was like a 2-on-1 situation or 2-on-2 maybe. I kind of wanted him to pass in real time, but to see him then crash the net, draw the penalty, and then kind of create that goal, because you can't say that he interfered with the goalie if the tripping call is what forced him to crash into Latkozy. I almost was hoping that, because I was thinking, my fear whenever they go to these reviews is that they're finding some way to take the goal off scoreboard. And I'm thinking, I almost didn't want Rosborough to touch it, because they can say that the goal was tapped in after the net had been dislodged, whereas if he hadn't touched it and the puck was just going to carry in across the line by its own momentum, that could have been some sort of ticky-tack way that they could have waved off that goal. But in either way, that's yeah, I'm glad to see Rosberg finally get his first goal, but that was really all Hall's doing on that play. And I thought he was good this weekend, and it's nice to see, had a really nice start during that month of October, which is such a struggle. He was one of the few bright spots, and but since November started, let's say, he's kind of been a little bit more quiet, which to be expected out of a freshman. And so, but nice to see him pick it up, and not just the 2 points that he had on Friday, but just the presence he had. He was a player that stood out whenever he had the puck on this weekend. So it's nice to see him step up and get him reacclimated to the score sheet and all that good stuff. So
that was his first goal since the Friday game at Western Michigan.
Okay.
Or his first point, I should say, since the Friday game at Western Michigan.
So a few weekends there. So yeah, it's like I said, the big thing for me was power play ineptitude. And if that was clicking, this would have been more of a laugher. But 6-1 versus 4-1, again, I'm not going to be too upset about the difference there. Road routes, especially in Omaha, are fun.
And
I will say that. And they used to have a couple. They used to have like
Yeah.
one of these a year. I kind of laughers in Omaha. I wouldn't classify this one as a laugher, but I did think that they played very well, and they were clearly the better team on that Friday night.
And shout out to the penalty kill as well, having a really solid night too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Posh gets the start. Twitter was a buzz with what the heck is going on. I thought it was kind of a weird time to have that, but therefore, it did. I thought Posh played. I thought he played well. Considering his first, considering his first start, I don't really think the team played very well. From what I saw, I felt like there was quite a few stretches where Omaha really dominated play and really forced the play for an extended period of time, especially with I think it was Mueller's goal. It was right after a power play expired, but I think they still, this was the goal to make it 2-1 Omaha. I think they still had plenty of, I mean, I think it was like a minute after. I mean, it was just sustained pressure the whole time and chance after chance after chance. But there were a couple of instances where it felt like just Omaha was a step ahead, and with the amount of injuries, they were down 3 forwards. That just to kind of see it, you'll have these eggs, you'll lay them, and I understand that, but it was just kind of a bummer that this is the last one to end the season on. And again, even that, it's still a 2-2 tie in the grand scheme of things. So it's still a good weekend overall down in Omaha, in my opinion.
Yeah, mentioning that second period, the goal by Mueller, and then I think it was maybe 15 minutes into the period that St. Cloud got their first shot of the period.
Yeah.
And to get out of that period still tied after the Kupka goal to tie it up, I thought was really fortunate based on how well Omaha was pressuring. First goal of the game there, very nice play. Ashan with the goal. I think
he looked like Kevin Fitzgerald down there, down low. Was able to just deke and shoot it like that. I was like, who is that? Again, a young player really stepping up like
good
that.
setup by Gross too, I thought. Who's continuing to impress me. You mentioned him in the Friday recap. I thought he was, again, he's a fun player to watch. I like how he has a good presence in terms of the face-off circle, a good playmaking ability, and kind of making something out of nothing here. And this one ended up being challenged by Omaha, which I thought was fairly stupid challenge, because based on the camera angle, they couldn't tell on the keep based on being on the camera's near side. There's no way to tell unless they have some other opposite angle, which based on Omaha's production value. I mean, I will give them the credit. I don't know if you noticed, I didn't see one end of penalty camera shot.
No, they did get rid of the penalty cam.
But I think the bad result of that challenge. Did you notice this? Because I thought the last two periods in particular, the camera went to they moved the camera up to Kansas. It was so far out, I couldn't even see the puck. And I'm wondering if they said, hey, you got to zoom back out so we can maybe see the onside, offside kind of deal. Like, it can't be too zoomed in. Because I thought it was pretty tough to watch the last couple of periods. And the contrast, all weekend, the contrast was off. I was mentioning this last year.
Omaha's contrast is always pretty bad.
It's not good. So that was a little frustrating, and it's just hard. You can't really, I'm just, for Saturday, the goals, I was just kind of basing it on the reactions of the players, because you can't really see, I couldn't at least really see the puck actually go in the net. It's kind of frustrating. And yeah, as you mentioned, so you had Posh playing for St. Cloud, which was a surprise to us, and as you're mentioning, a lot of the fans on the internet. But Omaha was a bit shorthanded as well. That Glenn got injured in the Friday game, and then this Matt Miller, I'm not sure if that was an injury or if he was scratched. He's one of those guys similar to Randall. Miller, I think, had a 25-point year last year. He was off to a real slow start. So I'm not sure if that was injury or performance based, his absence on Saturday. But, those are some decent players for them. And, I'll say about Omaha as far as I think that top line's decent. That Mueller played a decent game. Randall obviously has a nose for the net, as we've seen. And that Lutke, not Lutke, the draftee, from I think the Coyotes. He's, like I said, he seems to be a decent prospect as well. So, but aside from that top line, I don't really see a ton of depth there. And even with, I was listening to their broadcasters. I did KBSC on Saturday, and I listened to their broadcasters, the Omaha broadcasters on Friday. They were even surprised at a couple of their power plays with the personnel that they were throwing out there. This Rollwagon seems more like a role player. Ray Fust, who that sounds like a character in Lonesome Dove or something. It's like a real frontier 1800s name, not exactly a hockey name.
It sounds like they're on the Ponderosa,
right.
With the Cartwright boys and Bonanza.
Right. Yeah.
That reference landed on two people. One of them is my wife.
Well, that's all that matters.
Maybe Whiskey Dave.
What should I go with? Deadwood. Let's go with Deadwood. Rewind the tape. Deadwood. Deadwood's too old. Yellowstone. That's the hot current Western. So
there we go. Yep. Yellowstone.
But yeah, so I was even sort of, it seemed like they were baffled by some of their personnel in the power play, and I was too. I didn't seem all that effective with the guys they were running out there.
I dare anybody else to find a sports podcast that'll just throw out a Bonanza reference. For better or for worse.
In fairness, Lonesome Dove is a little bit more updated than Bonanza. But Lonesome Dove did not spawn a chain of buffet restaurants. So
that's right. Rest in peace, by the way, since that is
one
no
of St. Cloud's. Yeah, one of St. Cloud's best.
One of the St. Cloud staples. Yeah. God, I had a coworker. She just loves Bonanza. And I think she went 4 or 5 times after, in the last month that they said that they were closing.
I remember I had a job that I got Employee of the Month for. My gift was a Bonanza gift certificate. I never used it. It went to waste.
You get the salad bar.
Was it that, or was it?
And now you could never go.
Was it that, or was it Old Country Buffet that had the guy that would shave the ham in front of you? Or the turkey. His one job would be to carve.
That was OCB. Yep, that was the old
Bonanza. I'm sure had its own gimmick that I'm forgetting at this point, but good stuff. So where were we? Back to the Omaha story.
So anyway, the infamous fish story.
So yeah, I mean, both teams kind of playing without some key players on Saturday. I agree that Posh looked good. I think that second goal, the Mueller goal. So Caleb Thiessen, I think it's Thiessen. I think I got an official pronunciation there from the KBSC guys. Was worked on that play, and Mueller was able to sort of dance around him. I think Posh would want that one back too. I think he was a little too deep in the net for him. Being beat near side there was a little, I don't know, less than ideal.
Also, credit goes also to Mueller.
With his, it was a great opportunity.
It was a great job. At the same time, I guess I just don't understand why at that angle, why going down is just what you do as goaltenders. It's just hold on to it, wait till the goalie to go down, and then just shoot it high. I know I kind of sound like Dave Starman because he kind of rants about this too.
Trust me, you do not sound like Dave Starman. But continue.
Okay. Because he also talks about when goaltenders hug the post versus being square to the shooter, but so it's kind of in the same line. But again, I mean, he didn't have a lot of room. He popped it.
What was he doing? Was he
down
hugging the post
2-1.
or was he square? I haven't been to Starman's goalie camp, so I'm not sure what the correct technique would be there.
Yeah. Well, what they're teaching is to hug the post. Like the main,
like kind of fit your shoulder sort of in the corner of the post.
Like, yeah, like still like face straight, but like just be right next to the post. So you can still, kind of see the action and whatnot, but that allows it for bank plays to be able to kind of sneak in. So that's what Starman is against. He wants you to be like, you try, just be square to the shooter, and then trust that your defense is going to be able to handle any type of pass going across, because that's a low percentage pass in his eye.
The Starman,
I think at least that's what I believe. And then he'll tweet about rush hour rates in Long Island. So I don't know. Starman's Twitter feed is weird at times. He really gets into how much he hates New York City transit pricing, but to each their own, I guess.
I still don't know how he was able to snag Fred McGriff for his goalie camp promo.
This is the instructional video that gets results.
But that's another story in and of itself. But yeah, so I'm saying you're playing with your, you're already shorthanded a little bit, with Reiner's out, and you got your backup goaltender in, for you to get a 2-2 tie on the road. I mean, I'm gonna take that. And they did not play their best game. I thought Omaha probably slightly outplayed them that game, especially that second period, or the entire period there.
I would say even more than out slightly.
That's fair.
I would say we got really handled.
Yeah, see,
maybe not really.
Somewhere in between those
we
two polls.
Yeah. Somewhere in between.
But yeah, and to cap out. Oh well, I did want to, before we do any sort of first half recap. Still on. I love the shootouts, man.
Shootouts, fun. Who do you got for a pal?
So you're not even going to answer that?
What?
Yeah,
shootouts?
You're all in favor of the shootouts after the Michigan shootout. Now, how has your opinion changed at all after this display of a shootout? Do you still think there should be pairwise weighting assigned to shootout victories or losses, and just in general, as your opinion? Because you seem to really shift there after the Michigan shootout win. You're like, let's get on board here.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, I do. I still think, even though it didn't go our way, and even though it wasn't as exciting or dramatic or anything along those lines, I still feel like it should be worth something, maybe a little bit more. But
conference point,
I am only going to
conference points not enough.
I'm only going to temper it the fact that, I mean, in this instance, there was a little bit extra with the conference point, but I feel like have it mean something, a little bit more. If hockey's still going that way, which it is.
Then we saw the fans really got into it too during Omaha after that shootout win.
And I'm going to, but I'm always going to bring myself up to what this actually means, which is really a tie, like actual capital T tie, not OT.
Like, I guess what I'm asking is,
whatnot.
Would
like I don't care. It's an SOL.
Oh, I'm SOL on a lot of things. But I'll say this: like, would the game have been any more or less satisfying had it just ended at 2-2 and they didn't play a shootout?
I think it would be about the same. I mean, maybe a little bit less satisfying if we would have won, and more satisfying, or you know what I mean? Like, it's dependent on the shootout. I said, I don't like this toe half in the water, half out. So, like, my goal, my end happy zone would be if this was just a tie and then we're done. But if we're going to be into the shootout land, let's dive into shootout land and not be this like, whoa, we got to appease the other people as well, and we have to make sure everybody's kind of happy, so therefore it's worth a little bit more but not worth everything, because hockey has to be like that, I guess. So that's where I'm like, at this point it's just like, yeah, let's just dive into a shootout and just, or not. But we're definitely not going to get rid of shootouts anytime soon. So
it's always a fun topic. Just want to check in on your evolving thoughts
just periodically.
Yeah. So we got a season, first half of a season in the books. Pow. Let's do a pow. You go first.
Pow.
Or go Huskies Woo can go first.
Or go Huskies
I
Woo.
I haven't really thought about it much, actually.
I haven't really thought about a pow. So okay, I'll stall a little bit. Go Huskies Woo. Says I think that's a testament to how Brett put the squad together. It's difficult to pick a pow. Guy scores on Friday, didn't score on Saturday. Goalies were flipped. Kuka only both nights scorer, and it was an empty goal. Torn between Rosie and Kupka, and he eventually picked Kupka as his pow. Grant's goal on Saturday was sick. Lucky really seemed to struggle on Friday. Posh looked good. I didn't mind him playing. I think Brett wants him to play soon and knows that we can't drop a Bemidji State game coming up. So after we won on Friday, thought he could get him in. So I don't know if... So like knowing now that it might be an injury tweak, I wonder if it is an injury tweak, I wonder if his opinion maybe changes a little bit with that. Also, the power play is just lackluster. I kind of hate it. But he also said, similarly, they're 7-0-1 in conference play, just off a 4-point weekend on the road, and there's lots of room for improvement. So it's a really good sign of where we're at right now. So he went with Kupka as his POW. And I do agree with him in the fact that, yeah, like trying to pick one is incredibly difficult. But I think I'm going to go more around just all around play and who really has impressed me in both games. And I'm going to go with Gross. And, he had the assist on Saturday. For Grant's beautiful goal, but I just thought in all situations, every time Gross was on the puck, he was almost like a pit bull out there, just kind of menacing, and I thought he made some incredible plays. I'm really excited to see kind of him continue to grow throughout his Huskies career.
That's a good pick. Both of those picks are good. I would be tempted to go with either one of them, but I'm going to go different just to be different. Should mention,
you contrarian.
I hate to bring this up as far as we're talking about the player of the weekend, but probably the worst weekend for Vitti. He was fairly quiet, I thought, all weekend, which is a little distressing. Even like on the power play, it didn't even seem like they were even setting him up for the Miettinen play, the alpha play.
It didn't even seem like they were setting up anything on the power play. It didn't look like it had any. I would prefer setting up for that play if, like, at least it was some kind of a plan, even though I've talked about how much I've hated just that plan. But I think that's where Omaha's aggressiveness kind of really came to the forefront, because I've, throughout the season, I said kind of the big Achilles heel for this team is when you put pressure on them, they tend to panic, or they can cause some turnovers and whatnot. And I think that at least on the penalty kill, Omaha was really able to do that, and St. Cloud was just never really able to get set up.
So I'll go out there. I mean, I think the two that you mentioned, or have been mentioned, are probably the two best selections. I mean, Hall, I thought was really good on Fridays, fairly quiet on Saturday, 0 shots on goal on Saturday. So I'm not sure if I can give it to him. The goalie split time this weekend. So it kind of washes each other out there. I've been thinking this the last couple of weekends that they've played. And sure, I'll go with it. I've actually been, and this should hold some water because of how much I was criticizing him earlier the year, but I've really been impressed with the development here of Warren Clark. And I thought he had a solid weekend this weekend for the Huskies. He's not a guy that, at least at this point in his career, is going to put up a ton of points. He did have an assist in the Saturday game, but he's been steady on the back end, and especially with like the injury to Reiners, his role is at this point, like at coming into the year, thinking maybe he's going to be a 1 game a weekend at best player. Then after the first few weekends, saying maybe he should be a 0 game a weekend player. He's solidly, I think, earned a spot for being a 2 game a weekend player. So,
yeah, I thought this was his most complete weekend.
So yeah, I'm going to go with him just to be different, just to spread the love, because this is one of those weekends that there is no obvious candidate. So I'm going to throw some love to Warren Clark, who I've, like I said, the last month and a half, really since the November started and the team kind of started to turn itself around. I think the fortunes of Clark have improved at sort of during the same time. So I'm going to throw some love out to Warren Clark. I thought it a very nice weekend.
Yeah, I don't hate that pick, and yeah, he has improved, and again, we have to remember that he technically jumped a level, going up, didn't play at all in the USHL, so it's a big jump, and I think he's adjusted and learned quite a bit, and that's only going to improve as we get to kind of this big stretch here, come January. So, first half overall thoughts, again, 7-0-1 in conference play. Lackluster, non-conference. It makes me worried as we're sitting at 14th right now in the pairwise.
Yep.
We're on the uncomfortable side of the bubble, as I like to say. So it's, yeah, a little bit risky. We got the series against Bemidji State, the home and home, which we'll go ahead and preview in a couple of weeks. But overall thoughts on this team, and where we picked our expectations going into the season. How do you think everything has fared?
Well, it's been a roller coaster because you had them second, right? And I had them first.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, was I disowning that first place prediction right around October 26th, let's say. But here we are, first place at the end of the first half here. I know it's not the first half of the NCHC schedule. It's different when we're going over the women's recap. That is like literally the first half. You've played half the conference games. You've played more than half of your games if you conclude your non-conference, whereas the Huskies, after the Bemidji series, that will be the official halfway point of their schedule. But still, they got 16 games of league play coming up. You've only played 8 games of league play so far, but 22 out of 24 possible points in conference. Even if I thought this team was going to be this unbeatable force, and they took care of business in October as we thought that they would, it's hard to have topped 22 out of 24 points. And you did have a chance there to do the clean sweep if you were able to finish the deal there on Saturday night. But so it's just, I was admitting after non-conference, or at least after October was done, that this is going to be a rebuilding year, and let's just hope to see some improvement. And we're kind of looking at players and just seeing their development, and certainly wasn't giving up on the year, but this just did not seem to be lining up even really close to where we were expecting. But they have definitely righted the ship. It's interesting too to see the personnel changes. Biggest question mark we had coming into the year was the center position, and we've kind of seen how that positional battle has played out. And again, not exactly how I expected it to play out.
Yeah, exactly. Can I
Sure.
just jump in 1 second?
Yep.
Because I had a conversation on Twitter, and I want to get your thoughts on it because I had I'll just come out and say it. Do you know how many points Adam Ingram has?
Yeah, he's got. Oh,
Don't
I
look.
was
Like,
just looking at it, so yeah, he's got 12.
oh, okay.
I mentioned that a couple weeks ago that I was surprised
Um,
at how many he had at that point. Is
Yeah,
that where you're
okay.
going with that?
And that's what I was going to say. Yeah, is that and was just kind of that aspect when I was thinking of people who are, for the segment, who's underperforming. Obviously, Okabe,
Right.
number one on the list. Okabe has not been able to find the back of the net since the first series. And, I think has a 2% shooting percentage. And I thought he actually played fairly well, had some chances. So he's kind of always around the puck, just really snake bitten and not able to get it. But then I thought of Ingram because I was like, God, I just feel like he hasn't really stood out. I felt like a lot more of my attention has gone like to Barrett Hall, since there's so much on the same line, that Ingram is kind of lost in the shuffle. But all of a sudden I looked and I was like, God, 12 points and he's fourth on the team in scoring. That really kind of blew my mind. And I was just kind of wondering your thoughts, and if you're kind of in the same boat as I am, that he has very quietly been just doing all the things, and maybe I don't notice them. Maybe it's, usually it's good for a defenseman if you don't notice them, but I'd like to notice him scoring a little bit more, but he's still creating opportunities, creating chances. So, I mean, I don't know. It just, that aspect really surprised me.
I think I agree. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago with Anhorn about being surprised at how many points he had as well. I'm looking at Ingram. Of his 12 points, 6 of them are second assists. Those can surprise you. Like a lot of times they are. Sometimes a second assist can be the key assist of a play. But if it's saving the puck from going out of the zone, or like a great clearing pass that sets up a 2-on-1. But there are ones where it's just a guy touch the puck second to last before the goal, and you just don't really recognize them. And I'm wondering if that's going to be the case with Ingram. Similar to where it was with Anhorn, where I went through one game where I think he had 3 assists, and it's like each one of them, it's just like, was not the primary like playmaker in that play. And so sometimes, points can be deceiving. The lack of points can be deceiving. Sometimes you'll make a great play and don't even get a second assist. So that might be part of it. Yeah, I mean, I think I'll kind of look at that first number, the 3 goals, as being if we're going to criticize, we want that to be more. Like if it's going to have 12 points, I'd rather it be 9 and 3 rather than 3 and 9, because I'm figuring that Ingram's the type of player who can finish. I see him more as a finishing type than a setup type. Not to say that he can't be a setup guy, but just with his shot, and I think his ability to his size, I find him to be more of an effective finisher than a playmaker at this point in his career. So yeah, it's hard to criticize 12 points in the first half of the season. That would put him right around 24 points, which is essentially kind of where he was last year as well. Maybe we're expecting a step up into maybe the 30-point range this year. I still think there's definitely room to improve for him, but at the same time, he's not a player that I typically like forget about. Like he doesn't go into modes where he's just kind of invisible. He's seems to be in the action. I seem to notice his presence, but I don't know if that's a satisfying enough answer. What about you?
Yeah, it's well. When I was thinking about it, I was thinking about, yeah, he must be kind of in that sophomore slump type area, and then just I don't know. That's just kind of my gut feeling from what I saw. But looking at, there's nothing that suggests that I can back that up. So it's just he's just been quietly producing, and so I just kind of wanted to get your take on that as well. And maybe it's also because, 28 shots isn't a lot of shots.
Yeah.
I don't think for him, I feel like you said, just, a shot and a half or so a game, you'd want him to shoot the puck maybe a little bit more. And I feel like him on the power play, he was, doing maybe a little bit more of the behind the back pass, and being more of a distributor when a lot of those instances, I would like him to kind of rip the puck. So,
yeah. So, I would say like other storylines here, as far as like mentioning centers and trying to find some line combinations that work. I feel like they've hit on something with the Sahlquist, Molinar, and Kupka line, particularly Kupka. Molinar has cooled off since sort of his hot start, donuts in the last 5 games for him. And then Sahlquist obviously had been hurt for a couple of those games. So we haven't really seen a full 100% of that line in a bit. I guess the Saturday game would have been the first time that they had been together since the Duluth series. So
yeah, getting kicked out also in the first game against Duluth probably doesn't help.
Yeah, not complete donuts if you count the penalty minutes, the 15 of them that he got on that one play. But and we feel like Werner and Vidy, coming into the year, we didn't think that was going to be common, much less like kind of solid line mates by the end of the first half. We certainly didn't see Okabe's struggles. And we didn't see Anhorn, who I've said I think he's picked it up in the last 2 or 3 weekends of play. But I've given up the idea that he's like a Hobie contender. But that's fine. He doesn't need to be a productive player. But he's certainly not at the level the high end level that we were expecting. But as we've seen, he can still be a more than serviceable player. And so it's just weird how it's all kind of unfolded. Where's Nick Ports? When's the last time we've talked about him? Jack Rogers, he didn't play this whole weekend. He kind of seems to be buried at this point. We've seen Rosborough kind of come out of nowhere. Sort of maybe that's the Nick Ports trade-off, because it seemed like once Ports kind of started to see the bench as a regular occurrence, then that's when we saw Rosborough play a little bit more frequently. We've seen Barrett Hall, we mentioned, going through a good first kind of spurt there in October, kind of went dead for a little bit. Maybe now he's waking back up. It doesn't seem like everybody's been peaking at the right moment, but yet we still have the 7-0-1 thing in the conference. And so there's nothing you can do about the non-conference. That's always going to keep you at the fringes of the pairwise this year. You got to take care of business against Bemidji too. But let's just assume that happens. You really got the big test, I think, coming up in January. Back-to-back weekends at Denver and versus North Dakota. That's the gauntlet of this year for the schedule. That's the gauntlet for this team, because you only play the Dakota just the once. You do play Denver at home towards the end of the regular season, but back-to-back weekends, that's really the big test in the second half, and you get that right away. So we're going to learn a lot quickly once the second half starts here, and let's just hope that injuries to key players. Crossing my fingers about Bassey, if that's going to be anything serious. At least it's good that we got some action for Posh this weekend. But guys like Sahlquist, who's been dinged up here, guys like Reiners, let's hope that he's back. What we had heard there from the KVSC guys is that he was going to be out for the first half, but hopefully back for the second half. Let's hope that that's the case. So, I'm optimistic. It's not the type of optimism that I had coming into the season for the Huskies, and it's certainly not the pessimism that I had after October ended. Where would you gauge this team's progress at the quasi halfway point?
Overall, when I'm looking, I thought their strength would be in their defense. And then just, looking to where they're sitting right now, 2.3 goals against, and that's good, tied for 8th in the country. Goals per game, though, down to 30th in the country. So I thought we would be maybe a little bit more dynamic, but I also was kind of lukewarm on this recruiting class coming in. And that's where I thought the defense was going to carry us. I thought Okabe, and then I thought Kupka was going to get a step forward, and Anhorn, and then Bassianet was going to give us kind of that kind of propel us to that top half, or easily in the NCAA tournament and top finish and whatnot. So but with how everything is kind of shaken out, is I'm incredibly excited for this freshman class. And Sahlquist has really gone, way above and beyond my expectations. But I mean, just looking at kind of the future of Huskies hockey, with obviously Barrett Hall. I thought Werner has looked like kind of a seasoned vet out there at times. We talked about Clark's step forward over the last couple of weeks. But I feel like also the last couple of weeks, maybe the last 3 series or so, I felt like it's been kind of a coming out party for Ryman and Gross. And they have been incredibly impressive. And I think so it's one of those things that, with where we're at right now, I like the prospect of these freshmen getting better. And then I think we're only like one good series from Okabe, him flipping on the switch. And then, then I think we're just going to start rolling. And then we're going to get a lot more of these, 4-goal, 5-goal games. We've had a couple, obviously, with Duluth, and then, put an asterisk over the Omaha game. But I think we're just, if we get a little bit of the gunk out, I think, we're going to peak at the right time that we need to. And that's really going to carry our momentum and get us into this tournament. But again, I don't like the side of the bubble we're sitting on right now. It just makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah. If we're struggling to come up with POWs for this weekend, I'm just thinking of this impulsively here, but would you have a POF player of the first half?
Ooh, a POF?
POF. You got to get the H in there at the end. POF. Because that's tough.
I don't. That's incredibly tough. Yeah, I don't. I mean, if I were to give you somebody that like most surprising, or like most,
it's not SPOF, not surprising player of the first half,
but like think of it as like coach of the year. Coach of the year usually goes to either the person who finishes first, or a team that we thought was going to suck.
A team that exceeds expectations the most is typically what a coach of the year or manager of the year will go with.
So like when I think of it that way, and this award as like who exceeded my expectations the most in that sense would be Sahlquist.
Are you going to give him the POF? Because that was our joke coming into the year, that he was going to be the team MVP.
It was 100%, but I've converted to a Sahlquistian, and his performance throughout the year. Hard also not to look at 10 goals from Alpha. I know we said we struggled, but that has really exceeded my expectations. So easy answer, probably VT Miettinen, go with, but my surprising pick, somebody I didn't have much expectations for, and I've been really impressed with, is Sahlquist.
It's a good pick. I think I'll also...
Which you... If you get into a DeLorean and you play this clip for me in August or October or September or whatever, and say this is what you are going to say at the unofficial halfway mark, I would have thought the season would have gone absolutely pear-shaped and absolutely bonkers.
Well, I did say jokingly that he would take... He's going to be the wire-to-wire team MVP because he's going to take the first draw of the year, obviously, and then he was going to score the overtime winner in the national title game. Well, he did take that opening draw of the year, which is the most obvious prediction. But that just means we just got to check off that second part, and we'll have that prediction nailed.
There we go.
I'll throw out some love for Kupka.
It'll be Kupka's a really good pick, but it'll be really crazy if, like we talked about, like how many of the great players that we've had over the past, I'll even say decade, but even more recent than that. And that Sahlquist, our first line center, is the one that brings home the natty. That's just
could be
poetic.
Could be. But yeah, I like thinking Kupka-esque. We've seen the metamorphosis of Kupka here. I'm throwing literary puns here. You're thinking that no one's going to get a rawhide or a Lonesome Dove reference, Bonanza. I'm just spewing out TV westerns.
Rawhide.
But yeah, Clint Eastwood. That's where he got his start. But I was making a Franz Kafka, Kyler Kupka pun, but I'm sure that fell flat. But because he wrote something called The Metamorphosis. But
that's the guy that turns in, like, he wakes up as a cockroach, right?
So some kind of bug. I'm not sure if it was a cockroach or not, but yeah, it's an insect of some sort. But and I didn't have low expectations for him. I think I put on the record a 30-point year from him, like during the offseason would be something that, seeing a 25-point year last year. And he had a slow start, three games, the first 3 games with nothing. But since then, points in every game except 2. And so he's been on the score sheet frequently, and he's got some big goals for the team too. Game winner against Duluth in that second game, the early third period goal, the Michigan game tying goal at the end.
Michigan tying game.
He's at there was a frustrating Alaska game, but he scored a key power play goal to tie that game up somewhat late too, before that game went pear-shaped. So, he has a knack for scoring some key clutch goals for them as well. And so I've enjoyed to see his progression, just in kind of a physical game. I can tell the other team doesn't like playing against him, sort of a pest. He's seemingly has that with that line too, with him and Molinar and Sahlquist. It's a veteran line, and they play in a sense of that they have this experience and they've been around the block a little bit. And I'm sure behind the scenes they're playing some role there too, trying to keep the team on an even keel after that terrible start in October. Let's just stick to it and we'll find it eventually. And they have in conference play so far. So I've liked what Kupka has brought to the table this year as well. But yeah, that's not an easy pick. And that's partially, I think, a tribute to how this team is built, that there is no clear, far and away star player. You have a lot of different contributors. And from a game to game basis, you're not sure who's going to step up and score. Offensively, it's similar in terms of the women's team, which we're going to get to. I should wait for a minute there. Great transition. But from the women's side too, from their offense has been coming from various characters of late, and they're stepping up some key goals. And offensively, we might have some more usual suspects on the men's side, namely Alpha. But it's nice to know that Granishon can pop in a highlight reel goal like he did on Saturday night. And it's nice to see that we can have guys like Gross and Ryman and Rosborough, first goal of the year. These guys of late have stepped up and cashed in some real big goals for this team. So it's a sense that, I'm not sure if I'm going to say that this is like the deepest team ever. Certainly not the deepest team even St. Cloud's had in recent years, but it's deep in the sense that, anyone is willing to step up and score key goals on any given day. And even got guys that are on the bench that are fighting for playing time that have proven to have some key contributions as well. So it's just a weird how we've gotten to this point. It's not so far off from where our initial predictions were, but the way that they've gotten there is completely been surprising. And that's fun. It keeps you on your toes, and you don't really know what to expect. I'm not complaining that much. Even though if you've heard this podcast for any length of time, we have plenty of complaints. But so far, it's been a interesting but yet still fun year so far, and excited to see how it develops towards the end.
Around anything else, I guess the weekend of college hockey on the men's side, or any other games that you watched? I had my eye on the Denver, Western Michigan, that whole kerfuffle that happened, where there was a good old dust up, I guess, if we want to keep
the
up
Western
with the,
theme.
The Western
bar
theme
fight
here.
there.
A little bar fight there at the OK Corral.
Pioneers and Broncos, like that's both of those are kind of Western themed.
Yeah, right. There you go. I'm your Huckleberry. That was an interesting series. Obviously, the Colorado College taking 2 overtime wins against North Dakota. That was a big surprise, causing the North Dakota fans to get into their Fire Berry mode, which is always kind of fun to see. But anything else kind of around college hockey in general? Any league? Anything on the men's side here?
Let's touch on those, the NCHC matchups a little bit. So the Western Denver series, I mean, talking 80s.
Oh, I should also say Duluth and Omaha played, I think, what was hockey, but the Toilet Bowl
was
there,
and as such, Duluth winning the Toilet Bowl, although I'm going to get to this too with the Denver Western Michigan series. Miami had tied that game on Saturday in the third period, and they overturned it based on an offside review where the guy was, if he was offside, I don't think it was conclusive at all. It was a millimeter in the zone. It's like the goal was scored like 30 seconds after it. It's like, what are we doing here? It's just pathetic.
Yeah.
And with that, saying that, I watched a fair amount of the Friday game, which is, both these games is throwback 80s types of affairs, 7-5 or 7-3 and then 6-5. Denver going to their third goaltender. It's this guy that they brought in from the USHL early. He's a future commit that's supposed to be incubating at the USHL this year, but with the disastrous goaltending from Matt Davis and Freddie Halleck, and Davis also being hurt, kind of compelled to bring in another guy, Geisel. I'm not sure. We're going to call him Dr. Seuss because that was Dr. Seuss's last name. So he becomes a good trivia question here. The third goalie in the first half for Denver this year, third different goalie to give up a 5-goal performance. So they've had 3 separate goalies in the first half give up 5 goals in a game. And this Geisel, like, you can tell he's brand new because he has no painted helmet. It's just like a regular white helmet. He got like the decals for his numbers, but that was about it for the flare on the helmet.
They got quick stickers back there of the 2 numbs that you need.
And that if there's an image of the first half for Denver, it's that. It's an unpainted goalie helmet, because that's the depths that you've had to dredge in order to try to get someone to stop the stupid puck for them. And doesn't look like this guy's off to a great start, at least with a 1-game sample size. But I was flipping back and forth through various games as I normally do, and I see this Denver Western Michigan game. It's tight affair again, and it's towards the end of the first period, and I flip it on, and there's just the first shot I see is of the penalty box. And they're like, yeah, well, they're going to review it. I seriously had it on for at least 7 minutes while they were doing reviews. I'm like, finally, I turned it on in the toilet bowl. I went to Miami and Duluth because I'm like, give me some hockey for F's sake. And then
they reviewed it, and then I don't know.
There's 2 reviews. That's what it was. They reviewed it, and then First Royal challenged it to then re-review it, which is why is that allowed? And then so that's all I saw of the game, because then it was I think it was the second period for the Huskies that started. So the next time that I checked in, seriously, I press play, and it's like, yep, they're going to a review. And it's just like, this is like the game from purgatory. This is a game that I can never actually watch. So I was able to see some of it. I saw the game tying goal at the end, but it was one of those things like, let's play some hockey. We're not here to watch the refs, but yeah, clearly a very heated game, and one that had a lot of penalties. I'm sure a lot of them were justified, but hard for me to get a flow of that game. So, and again, I think a decent performance from Western, taking 4 points there from Denver. Western again has been able to, position themselves in the top half of this conference. Another year where I'm down on Western in the beginning of the year, and said, prove it to me again that you can build another stellar top line. It looks like they have been doing that. I still think that even when we mentioned Cameron Rowe has been putting up a great year statistically. I think when we mentioned the 925 save percentage, just take a look at their non-conference, and it was 2 games against Lindenwood and 2 against St. Lawrence is also terrible. That's really been padding his numbers a little bit. In the conference, he's definitely not been as sharp as his overall numbers would indicate. I still think that's their kind of weakness, if they have one, is in goal. But they certainly can score with anybody, except if you're talking about the Huskies in mid-November when they played them out there. But they look pretty good, and Denver's got those same question marks that they've had all year. And so, yeah, if you watched a little bit more of that game than I did, what were your takeaways?
Yeah, first off, Woden, if you're listening, because obviously you are, college hockey stats used to have that little breakout of like overall and conference stats. And you brought up a good point, especially because, again, Rowe's gonna face Lindenwood 2 more times. Like, that's not a bad idea for, to kind of see that difference between what their
I think NCHC's
non-conference.
website has conference only stats. I'll check it. I'll check it if you want to keep going. Please. I can tap dance, or you can tap dance, and I'll check on that.
I can tap dance. NCHC website it's
not very good.
I don't know how hard it is to make like a decent. I mean, I guess College Hockey Stats did it the best, and the fact that it's no longer there is just sad. And maybe because there's no ads on it, maybe that's also why I like it the best. But just everything was laid out so clean, it was just so easy to find. But yeah, I mean, there was just a lot of there was a big scrum in that game. And basically Granger kind of gave a little bit of shot after the whistle. I mean, it was a little bit of a tap of the goalie, and then everybody else just kind of jumped in. Hillenbrand got a game misconduct for grabbing the face mask. Galambos got unsportsmanlike conduct, a bunch of roughing calls, kind of all over the place. I was a little bit surprised that I think after all was said and done, Denver ended up actually getting a power play out of it, which kind of surprised me, that they gave the goaltender interference to Granger, even though it was, I don't know, I don't think that was the right call at all, even though he did kind of start. It's not like he barreled over the goalie or anything like that. It was more of a little incidental nudge than anything that Denver just wanted to get some frustrations out, especially after getting waxed the first night.
Yeah, so Rowe overall is at 915. He was at 925 coming into the weekend, so his 8-goal performance against Denver put a dent into that, but his conference-only stats is he just had a 906 in the conference. So that is buoyed by an easy non-conference schedule. You want to guess at who's got the top save percentage in conference games only in the NCHC?
I would guess Bassey.
You would be correct. 934 in 7 games.
7-0-1, or I guess all 7 wins were him. So I guess that would have been the easy one. Where's Pearson on that list? Or Person
in
or
conference?
Wants to go by now.
888. And he's at number 7 in the conference. Now they're counting both Thiessen and Stayskal from Duluth. They've both played 4 games. Everybody else on this list has either 7 or 8 games So, I mean, even if you want to take out the UMD goalies, he's still bottom half of the regular starters. Stayskal, then Mbarico. We're calling it second because I'm taking Skayskal and Thiessen out of it. But so Mbarico well behind Bassey at 913. So, I mean, and again, Bassey, he had a nice weekend against Miami, and and he had that really good weekend against Western. I mean, I'm not trying to discount his stats, other than saying he played Miami, which a lot of these other goalies have as well. That's the benefit of playing Miami. And maybe that's why Halleck's there at dead last at 861 save percentage in 7 games. He hasn't played Miami yet. So he'll have a chance to work out those numbers if he hasn't lost the job fully to the guy who was playing in the USHL 3 weeks ago. So, statistics. What do they say? 3 kinds of lies, damn lies, and statistics. They can. This is maybe feeding into that narrative.
Always happy to see North Dakota get swept. Even though that's the 3-on-3 overtime, so asterisks there. I'm putting the asterisks on. Obviously, everybody else around the country is calling it a full-fledged sweep, but
it's not a sweep.
Clown hockey,
it's a sweep in the head-to-head because the head-to-head in pairwise is 2-0, which they got the same amount of points as St. Cloud this weekend. They both got 4 points. I don't know how you could really call that a sweep, but it's easy for people, right? We're trying to grow the game, so CC swept them.
Game. So, but so I mean, sitting there in the standings, sitting St. Cloud obviously in first, North Dakota with 22 points, North Dakota at 18, 22 points, and I was kind of going through the history, looking to see home ice. A lot of mid-30s was kind of the basis. 33 a couple of years was the 4th place finisher. 36 was 1 year. I think 1 year was like 41, which was incredibly high. But so that's kind of some of the unofficial kind of benchmarks of what we're looking for at least to clinch home ice for the first round.
Which that was,
and to see that
go back to the one we did after Alaska. Because I was saying, at least you're not going to get home ice and play in the conference. Like, not even thinking about first place. I don't even think 4th place is a possibility. But now I would say if you don't get a home ice spot in the playoffs, something really bad went wrong. Maybe you return to form to the October level of hockey that they were playing. Something like that would have to happen for them to drop that far.
So, January 12th and 13th at Denver, and then 19th and 20th home against North Dakota, which is our only time facing North Dakota. So, some big series coming up with the people right behind us. So, obviously get through the non-conference with Bemidji. Hope to salvage a little bit more from pairwise and take care of business. Bemidji might, or I would say probably would be without one of their players.
Yeah, it's weird. They got a junior player.
Yep, got a junior player. We're planning to have Jake Baskin on, kind of a world junior aficionado, and also to talk a little bit of WCHA women's. He follows Gophers hockey for the women's side. So we'll get his thoughts about that team. But so I mean that's going to be kind of a big series for the non-conference side of things to salvage a little bit, a little bit of the pairwise.
And we'll preview that. Probably 2 weeks, whatever the week before that they play that game. And I also, I mean, we're going to have our year. It would be the first part of 2024 when you do predict the field, the halfway point. I know I've been giving short shrift to the other conferences. I've still been following them. We've got so much to talk about. We've already an hour and 14 in. We haven't talked about the women's team. Yeah. So when we do that, predict the field again for the second half, we'll be sure to zoom through the other conferences and kind of mention what we've been seeing through those leagues.
Sacred Heart,
right up there. So yeah.
So perfect. Women. Let's talk about it. women go down in overtime 2-1. JoJo was in net for that one. Avery Farrell had a 4-on-4 goal to tie it in the third. But tripping call on Taylor Lind gave overtime power play, and Minnesota-Duluth was able to capitalize on that one. And Saturday's game, a little bit of a different story, where St. Cloud was able to win 5-1, 2 empty netters on it. Reese Hunt was able to score for Minnesota-Duluth, but that was on a power play and an extra attacker situation. Avery Farrell again with a goal. This one was shorthanded. Beautiful goal. Alice Sorial, beautiful backhand at the top of the slot, was just great. Himmlerova with the first goal. Overall, I was a little bit worried coming into this matchup. I was excited but worried because of what Minnesota-Duluth was able to do to Colgate. After this series, I am completely comfortable playing Minnesota-Duluth in the playoffs. I didn't see all of the Friday game. I saw bits and pieces of it. It was kind of a fluke, I would say, that Minnesota-Duluth was able to even get that one into overtime. JoJo misplayed a puck from
the blue line.
The blue line.
Harmless
blue
dumping.
line corner.
It wasn't even really much of a
harmless
shot.
Dumping.
But...
So I don't know if she was lost it in the lights or whatnot, but it was kind of a bizarre to see a weak goal given up by JoJo. And then obviously it should go without saying at this point, but Ahola played on Saturday. Obviously was able to get the victory there because that's what Ahola does. So it's, just with how the game's played in the weekend, I am completely comfortable playing Minnesota-Duluth in the playoffs, because that's where it's going to be. I mean, let's face it, they're essentially locked in right now with 4 and 5 being us two, around 23 and 22 points, I think. And then the next place is 9 points. So it's kind of a big swing there. But yeah, I was really impressed with how they played. Grace Wolf again did not play, so Himmlerova on D. But I thought she played really well. But I think maybe a little bit early to kind of give the POW, but obviously Avery Farrell, seeing some of the depth scoring kind of come through with Farrell and Sorial, just obviously made me happy that we're seeing that a little bit more and get a big weekend out of the Huskies. And I'm actually kind of looking through, even though we didn't beat Minnesota, I have no problem playing Minnesota. I don't really have a problem with playing Ohio State. I am incredibly confident in this team and how we play and how this season has gone on. I'm so hard into this Kool-Aid right now that I like, if we're in a 1-game situation in the final face-off, I like our chances. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm 75% sure we're going to win or anything like that, but I mean, this team has shown that we can play with anybody in the country. I mean, again, to go through this stretch, win against Ohio State, tie against Minnesota, where again, I thought you were, I mean, it wasn't your normal game against Minnesota where we were dominated or any sense of that. I mean, Minnesota has impressed me in both games that they've played. And then a game again where I think we outplayed Minnesota-Duluth for, kind of the majority of the weekend. I'm all aboard with what this team is doing and how they're playing, and really excited for, the second half. And hopefully we can take care of business when we playing the lesser teams in the WCHA.
Yeah, it was definitely a good weekend. So watching the game on Friday was a frustrating game because it gave me some flashbacks to the St. Thomas series, where I thought they thoroughly outplayed Duluth. Clear sort of shot advantage, possession advantage. to have that goal for Duluth go in was just a killer, because you're thinking it was almost like I was thinking like this is almost as if the Huskies were playing themselves this weekend. We mentioned it coming into this series how similarly built these two teams are, where they've been struggling for offense. They've got a couple of good players. Each team's got some players with some double-digit point out totals so far this year, and that McMahon and Hunt for Duluth have been decent this year. But there's just no real star power. But they also just have two great goalies on both teams. And we saw that with Gascon on Friday was the difference in that game for getting that game to overtime. I mean, and then it's the Chobak's bad goal that she gave up. But especially in the first half of that game, like prior to the Duluth fluky goal, like that was kind of the script of that game was St. Cloud's just not able to finish their chances. Offensively challenged might be harsh, because I don't think that they struggled generating chances. It's just an inability to finish chances that has been holding them back. Like if you were able to finish chances,
correct,
you probably beat the Gophers this past Tuesday.
Yes.
If you finish your chances, you beat Duluth. You don't even go to overtime on Friday. And it's nice to get points out of these games. As I mentioned, now we're at that, where I said at the beginning of the year, if we're doing like a whole year first half recap, getting points, some points in half of the games against these top four, and playing 16 games, you can get points in 8 of those games, you're probably going to make the tournament. So far, they played 8 games against that top echelon, and they've gotten 4 games in which they've gotten points out of 4 of those. So you're right at that 50%.
And I thought that was incredibly optimistic that we'd be able to do that. Like, I was like, there's no chance that's going to happen. Almost no chance that we're going to. And sure enough, here we are. We're sitting 7th in the pairwise as well. So on the good side of that bubble. So just to see that, it's been incredibly uplifting, to say the least.
Yeah, but like I said, it was again frustrating to see the lack of finishing on Friday, and the way it was looking is like this is going to be a 1-0 loss, and Farrell was able to pot that game tying goal, which is huge. And yeah, the overtime, Lind had to take that penalty. It would have been a breakaway for the Duluth player. Some misposition, so she was kind of the last Husky there on the back end, and unfortunate that she had to take that penalty. And they scored the goal, I think, right when the penalty was ending. I think they still called it a power play goal, but it might have been right at the 2-minute mark.
Yeah, I was like period. Right at the 2-minute mark.
So I mean, the player hadn't returned. She hadn't returned to the action at that point. So 4-on-3 goal to win it, which was certainly a bad taste in your mouth, because, like I said, I thought clearly we're the best team on the ice that game. And then as we saw the Saturday game develop in the first period there, again, more of the same. I think they got the first 6 shots of the goal, 6 shots on goal in the Saturday game, and having some big opportunities. And this is the game that Haley McLeod starts for Duluth. We mentioned her last week, undefeated in her college career so far. As good as Gascon has been for Duluth this year, McLeod's been better. And so, and particularly playing very well of late, being in net for both of those Colgate games, and then the game they won in Madison last weekend. And so you're thinking, it's going to be tough to get one by her this weekend. And Duluth, to their credit, was able to kind of turn the tide. They played really well in the second period. There were gross shooting advantage in that period, but it was the Huskies that ended up making the plays. We mentioned the Himlerova goal. So after the Friday game, I'm just like, I know that Wolf's injury has been forcing some roster shuffling here, but honestly, this team does not really struggle defensively, especially with these goaltenders. My hope solution was put Himlerova back forward, because this team is desperate for offense, and she's one of your top scorers and
for finishing.
Right. And and maybe we can get 6 of one, half dozen of the other, because she does score kind of the greasy goal there on the doorstep in the first period, which they reviewed that for, I'm not sure why they reviewed that goal, but so I mean that was key. Even though I don't know if Wolf's going to be back, if the whole plan was like she's going to be out for the first half, but she's going to be back. for the second half. But I mean, this is
when I saw her on Saturday, and so the women's scratches kind of sit in the same corner. And I saw her crutches were laid beside her. So she's still on crutches, still putting some weight on it, but so this is definitely lingering on longer than I originally anticipated it.
Yeah, and so I don't know.
And I've already emailed Adulski once on an illness. I'm nervous about doing it again because again he scares me just flat out.
Yeah, and it's not that Himlarova's been she's held her own as a defender here since. So it was after the Minnesota State game. So basically since the start of November, she's been playing the point. She's got 4 points in that time period, but just 1 goal. And that's just not quite the role that I think she's best suited for this team. And we saw that Jaden Britt played last weekend. We got some action. And she played this weekend as well. She played the Gopher game and then these 2 Duluth weekends. And she hadn't really seen much action so far this year. And so it's like I feel like we have enough depth defensively that we don't need to put Himlarova back on the point so far. Again, not to say that she's been bad, but I just would want the offense to be enhanced by putting Himlarova there. Like I said, maybe you can have the best of both worlds if she's going to be able to step into the action and put in some key goals. But we'll see how that develops through the second half of the year, because I can see it if Himlarova was just doing this temporarily, if this is a short-term injury for Wolf. At this point, a 6-week injury, I don't know if I would even classify it as short-term. And if it's going to be the rest of the year, I would really hate to have to lose Himlarova's offense, or the bulk of it, let's say, for like true presence, I think, as a kind of physical, grinding type of forward. I would hate to miss that, especially because of the back end that we have on this team already. But we'll see how that develops. But you mentioned the surreal goal. I think that's one of the goals of the year for the Huskies. I think that was a great play. She's been impressive this year. As far as like freshman of the year, I would probably give her the edge so far. She's just been like the most dynamic player among the freshmen, not to say anything like Zimmerman's been impressive as well. As a freshman, there is a freshman out there, we think. I'm not sure if we can call her a freshman, but there's one out there that my podcast partner here has been calling for.
I have been,
but we don't know. We don't know if she exists. So
she's Schrodinger's freshman, I think is what she is. She's we don't know if she exists or if she doesn't. So Avery Myers is in, like, she's pretty popular on TikTok.
As you mentioned.
And so I follow her on TikTok, and they have the trend of who on your team would you not let your brother date? So they asked all the women who on the team would you not let your brother date? Pretty much everybody said either Avery Myers or Grace Delmonico.
So she exists.
So she does exist. And all of these, people, because it's the internet and this is just how it works. All of these guys on Twitter that follow Avery were like, okay, show me who's Grace or why Grace or who's Grace. And I comment, everybody wants to see Grace and I want to see her on the ice. Is Zadolski planning on redshirting her or what? So I'll let you know if I get any intel from Avery Myers on TikTok.
Please do.
Yeah. But we do have an exhibition game that was thrown up on the schedule against Bemidji.
I missed this,
which was kind of a surprise. So maybe that's the chance to get Grace Delmonico some time, and hopefully we can,
because that won't affect a red shirt if they are planning on redshirting her.
I don't know. I mean, probably will. So we'll probably not see her. But
would you say?
I don't know.
I see St. Thomas on January 6th. Is that the one? That wasn't.
Oh, what's the St. Thomas?
That's what I'm seeing on their website, on St. Cloud's website right now. I don't remember that being on the schedule at the beginning of the year. Did they just like add that as an exhibition game?
Yes, it was just added. Like it was just announced like a week ago.
I guess I didn't know they could do that in the middle of the season, but it'd be a good idea because you're off for more than a month now. The next actual game they play is January 12th, so it's actually a nice idea to have a tune-up there before you get back into action with Mankato on the 12th. So, good to know. I hope they're gonna televise that because it might be the only time this year that we get to see Delmonico Steak out there. So. But so we're getting back to the game. Surreal, great goal there. Yeah, and 10 points for her freshman year so far. I think she's been impressive with the skill that she brings to the game. I can see her developing into a future offensive stud for this team. So good to see her. And then I think that was kind of the key play because you're thinking 2 goals up against Ahola is like a 4-goal lead for like an average goalie. But the real sort of dagger was the Farrell shorthanded goal there. And we mentioned too with Duluth, like huge power play struggles this year. I mean, this was all weekend. Their only power play goal they scored was that extra attacker power play goal. So it was a 6-on-4. They pulled their goalie with like 5 minutes to go when they're down by 3. And they were able to score one of their only goal of the game on that Saturday game in that power play opportunity. But just playing or with their power play, 15.7%, and this was the 5th goal that they've given up, 5th shorthanded goal they've given up. So that's like that makes the dismal power play numbers even worse if they're able to give up power play goals at that clip. So Farrell, as you mentioned, I would agree. My player of the weekend. She's it's similar to the men's side where the numbering of lines doesn't really matter to me. But I mean, Farrell's basically been playing on their quote unquote first line, which I wouldn't have expected based on a transfer player coming from Franklin Pierce over the offseason. I didn't expect her to be getting such prime premier minutes, but she's stepped up. I mean, 9 points in 20 games, nothing to sneeze at in this league, and some key goals too in these games. And nice to see a shorty put on here. I found out something interesting about Franklin Pierce University. I can't imagine.
I was gonna say the president or the.
I've been reading up on the president as well, but because this is part of it. I can't imagine there's any other college team that this is the case. So they're located in New Hampshire. It's the college, Franklin Pierce University, is in New Hampshire, a tiny town called Rindge, Rindge. Which I don't know why it's there. I figure, is that the birthplace of Franklin Pierce? It's not. But they play their games in a different state than where their college is. So they're in Rindge is in southern New Hampshire. And so it's like 15 miles from a town in northern Massachusetts, which is where their rink is. So they have to go to another state to play their home games, which I think is weird. I can't imagine that any other college can say that. But there is some information about the Franklin Pierce Ravens that you probably didn't know until right now. So that's what
I didn't know that their mascot was the Ravens.
Oh, we've been over that. I think I did a Guess the Bird contest because I think I gave it to you that it was a bird. But yeah.
And then I probably made some kind of lame Edgar Allan Poe joke.
I think you may have. Yes.
And then I went to the Cast of Montiago or something like that. And I think
you're right. Yeah, no, the real Franklin Pierce, he was like Portsmouth, New Hampshire. He had nothing to do with Rindge. He had nothing to do with that area of New Hampshire even. He's the only president to be from New Hampshire. So they really love him in New Hampshire. But not really sure why they picked that.
Nobody else loved him.
Presidential historians especially do not take fondly to Franklin Pierce. But fun fact, and that's where she was able to spread her wings for the first couple of years of her career, and then she flew the coop. And nevermore to Franklin Pierce. And now another literary reference. I know I'm killing the audience here. We need to do the proper demographics here. We need to get light beer and Polaris ads. That's what we really need to hit those demos here for the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Right. But Edgar Allan Poe was a writer. He wrote about a raven. So it's you can Google it, but
yeah, I think they got it.
So
I think they got it.
But yeah, Avery Farrell, good game, player of the weekend.
It's I don't know, like I'd like to know her story because obviously from Rogers, and then how do you get recruited by Franklin Pierce, and then you just kind of hop in the transfer portal and be like, I think I want to be closer to home. But
I mean, I think we're seeing it. So this is kind of the transfer portal writ large is opportunities for players who, didn't have, tons of offers coming out of juniors or coming out of high school or wherever they're coming from, and had to settle for, hey, maybe Franklin Pierce is the only school that was offering Avery Farrell something in terms of a scholarship, but then she puts up a 20-point plus season for Franklin Pierce, and she's able to parlay that into something where she's back closer to home, and obviously in a league that's got a lot more eyeballs and a lot more relevance. You can kind of use that portal as a stepping stone to a different situation. And I mean, from the Franklin Pierce side of things, it kind of sucks because if you do find someone who, like Farrell, has a pretty good season for him last year, they're kind of immediately flight risks. But, if you're at a St. Cloud, particularly, like I'm wondering, like they're very active this past off season. Players like Farrell and Kaufman and Myers from 2 off seasons ago. But they had Anik from Bemidji, Bowlby. I mean, going down the list, there was Bowlby. 6 or 7 players they got from the transfer portal. And that's kind of, I think, in large part due to the raised relevance that Adelsky was able to bring the program just in his first year. If you do something like make the tournament this next year, we saw like Ohio State and Duluth, for that matter, both snag 30 to 40 point players from Penn State last year. Maybe St. Cloud's going to be in the market for a player like that. Players like in a CH, like
definitely needs a player like that, a finisher.
So I mean, it raises the stakes if this team has that much more attraction for other players to come to be based on their success. Maybe you're going to be in the market for a player like that, and you can make that jump even quicker, like from just making the tournament to being like a true contender of the tournament. You can kind of see how Adelsky, like this is like express lane terms of turnaround. Like I expected him to be good. I didn't expect him to be this good this quick.
Correct. And maybe that's just, one of the things with the transfer portal. And we're kind of seeing that with Wisconsin on the men's side too. They're able to really jumpstart the rebuild of a program because you don't have to keep the people who are around. Obviously sucks for the players if you can't latch onto a home, but it's obviously working out incredibly well for St. Cloud State as the team, and just kind of seeing what's going to, if we can get some of these, players that maybe like a Ohio State or a Minnesota might not have room for, but a solid 30-point scorer from another team like a Farrell who is able to come in and able to finish, and just more of those players is obviously going to be, just even more so. And if, we can keep up our defensive side positionally, that's kind of seems to be Adelsky's MO. I think, obviously the sky's the limit for this program, and, we can really be competitive with any team. And we've shown it so far this year.
You can see like these, I was thinking like these turnarounds. I was thinking this with Michigan State with their men's team as well. Like when you have a coach come in and immediately turn around a program that had been sort of stuck in the water and struggling for a long period of time, it immediately kind of makes the prior regime look even worse. Like this doesn't look good. Like Michigan State's turnaround looks doubly worse for Dan Cole, who couldn't turn it around in about 5 or 6 year term there. This doesn't look very good on Steve McDonald's resume as far as he's the previous Huskies coach.
Well, neither what Gentry said on the the podcast.
Sounds like it was a welcome change. Not to dunk too much on him, but and not to say that this is easy.
I don't think he's.
I don't think that this is easy for Adolski. But he's been able to. I think just like watching that podcast, it seems like the culture has really become sold on Adolski, and I think he's been able to get some contributions from everybody on that team, get like a full buy-in on his system. And then, like I said, having some shrewd moves in the portal have made this rebuild, I think, much quicker than we've expected. And you're mentioning like frozen face-off and playoffs. I mean, this is uncharted territory, really, for us. I mean,
it is.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, this is up to 7th in pairwise. They were able to hop Quinnipiac this past weekend. And Quinnipiac actually had a late comeback in their game. I'm going to say it was against Princeton, I'm going to say. I can check that. But and only able to get the pairwise from Ustro. It's like the only reason I go to Ustro now is because CHN, which doesn't even really care about having the women's page on their site, they don't have their pairwise up for the women, but Ustro does. And so I'm just hoping that is accurate. But according to Ustro, the Huskies are up to 7th in the pairwise.
You click the current pairwise link for the women's, and it goes to the standings page. So it's not even. It's like the link is just like, we don't even want to take care of the link. So
Quinnipiac. They were down 2 goals in the third to Princeton and came back and then ended up winning that game in overtime. If we're in St. Cloud's shoes, it's these fringe ECAC teams, Quinnipiac, St. Lawrence, Cornell, kind of rooting for them to lose and to solidify their spot, because there's not a ton you can do with the other 4 WCHA teams in the mix other than beat them, which, as we mentioned this past week, had a good week with them.
Well, and who does Quinnipiac got?
Duluth coming up.
They've got Duluth coming up, so it's kind of your, I guess, monkey's paw series where, those are the 2 teams you're fighting for these kind of lower positions. But at this point, you're rooting for Duluth to win, I guess.
Probably a split probably would be fine this weekend. Or maybe you want Quinnipiac to sweep that series, so then St. Cloud can jump Duluth, but then have Quinnipiac tail off. I don't know, gaming the system in terms of, it's like 5-dimensional chess. I'm not sure. You'd probably go pretty crazy pretty quickly if you play that game. But that'll be a tough series, that one. And then obviously for Duluth, their upcoming non-conference with Boise State, which we talked a little bit about last show.
I forgot about that.
Keep that in mind as well. But I'm looking ahead here as well. Obviously you've got to take care of the schedule in front of you, but if they're able to hold water against the top 4, we mentioned the schedule. You've got I guess now we're going to mention the exhibition game against St. Thomas, a little tune-up game, but then you've got Minnesota State and you've got St. Thomas to start the year, or to start the second half of the season, which then is the prelude to the second gauntlet. Now, they did pretty well in the first gauntlet. We mentioned the 5 games there, Ohio State, 1 against Minnesota, and then Duluth. They were able to get points out of 4 of those 5 games. Yes, just 2 wins, but you also had a tie and an overtime loss in that situation, in that stretch as well. That gives you some pairwise boosting too. So I think that's as good as I remember I mentioned the 3 games at home, thinking if we can go 2-1, is that too high of a bar? Is that too greedy? And you're like, I think so. I mean, yeah, you didn't go 2-1, but you got points out of all 3 of those games. I think it's tough to be disappointed in that. So, I mean, and I kind of like, seeing that at the beginning of the season, that 8-game stretch against all 4 of those top WCHA teams, like the true gauntlet there. I actually kind of like how it's set up, whereas you get the tune-up games, 2 series with Mankato and St. Thomas, and then you just knock them all out. And I think it's almost better that you just play them all in a row, because you're going to be in, like, all of these games are going to be intense. There's going to be no like trap games in between.
In a span of 8 days, though.
Well, I'm saying for the second half with the 8-game gauntlet. Like there's no hey, you got Bemidji this weekend, and that's going to be a trap game. Like you're always going to be fully focused, and a lot of these games are on the road. I think 5 of the 8 are on the road. So you have to win. You have to go 6-0 against the bottom 3 teams. You can't drop any of those games.
Yep.
But so far they haven't dropped any of the games to those 3 teams. They were 6-0 in the first half against those teams, and you got to do that the second half. And then, like I said, you take points in 4 of those 8 games, which I think, based on what we've seen this first half, I think that's definitely doable. I think you're putting yourself in pretty good position. And then you see if you are like, I don't really want to be 8th. Like if you're 8th, that's still not certain, because a team lower than that in ECAC, if they end up winning their conference tournament, that could knock out the 8th place team. 7th is really a little bit more stable, I think. Plus, you get the benefit, if you're 8th, you're kind of looking like you're lining yourself up in Ohio State's bracket. Whereas if you're 7th, you're lined up with the Gophers bracket, which I think there is a bit of a dip in quality between Ohio State and the Gophers. Would you rather play the Gophers, or would you rather play Ohio State with a chance to go to the Frozen Four? Again, I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but it's fun to speculate, and it's fun to, put yourself in that position. Like if you're 7th, you're going to be playing probably the CHA champ, maybe the Hockey East champ, depending on how pairwise shakes out. Whoever you play, if you are 7th or 8th, you're probably going to be favored in that game, because you're going to be playing a team that's lower than 9th in pairwise. It's going to be an automatic qualifier. And again, you can't assume anything, especially in postseason hockey. But to see like how we're looking ahead at potential NCAA matchups, it tells you how much this program's come in such a short period here in Idalski's tenure. So I really like what I've been seeing this last game. Yes, the 2 empty netters made the score look a little bit more lopsided than it was, but still 3-0 basically until 5 minutes to go in the game. And you definitely had full control. Other than that second period on Saturday, I thought you were in control for the entire weekend. And it's nice to see that you didn't just have to win a game 1-0 or 2-1, that you could play with a little bit of a lead. And I think I think the confidence you could see it kind of grew on them. Like they liked playing with a little bit of a lead. It gave them a little bit more confidence, and it gave them a little bit more opportunity to play a little bit more freewheeling. So yeah,
like you said, 3-goal lead with a hole in net. I mean, you might as well try to scale the Berlin Wall.
So I mean, it's
not going to happen.
It was a good weekend. 4 points against Duluth. A good way to end the first half of the season. But we got another half to go, and it's going to be fun again. How this one ends up, it's going to be real fun to see how it all shakes out.
I was just, as we were talking about Quinnipiac and Minnesota-Duluth, I was just looking at their roster, and I just found it kind of interesting. Their leading goal scorer, 13 goals, 11 assists, 24 points, Sadie Peart.
Really?
Yeah. From Grand Rapids, Minnesota.
Yeah, I think there might be a relation there.
There might be. So, traitor. Anyway, technically, I mean, she's a graduate, so she'd be there first, actually. So I guess I can't really fault her.
Yeah, fifth year there, all at Quinnipiac.
Mm-hmm. So, we've got a couple of questions here. As we wrap up, only a couple. Any Milwaukee recommendations for the quick trip holiday face-off? Milwaukee is obviously a really interesting town. It is the only major U.S. city to elect 3 socialist mayors, and
what does it mean?
Indian name.
And what does it translate?
It's Algonquin for the good land. So it's just kind of interesting little tidbits about Milwaukee that I know from Mr. Alice Cooper. So as far as anything, I'm actually surprised with how Dan Jacobson is and how the season has gone for Minnesota-Duluth, that he is going to still travel to Milwaukee, but good for him. Way to stick it out and stick out this Duluth team.
And as someone who's, other than the states that I've lived in, I've spent the most time in Wisconsin. Very little experience with Milwaukee. I'm trying to even think. I don't know if I've even spent a night there. I have way more experience with Green Bay, way more experience with Madison, way more experience with like Door County even. And then like Northwest Wisconsin, my family has a cabin there. So I spent loads of time. I think
everybody in Minnesota has a family member that has a cabin somewhere in either North or Northwest Wisconsin. I think it's just a rule.
Webster, Wisconsin. I know that place like the back of my hand. So, but yeah, as far as Milwaukee goes, I think I went through there and got lunch somewhere, but I couldn't tell you where, and I don't really have much recollection of it. Do you have any Milwaukee recs?
I mean, it's where the Brewers play. Right?
That's correct. They're the Milwaukee Brewers. So I think that's. So
fair. I would imagine. Yeah. So I imagine there's a lot of breweries around the area.
I wonder.
I would
maybe,
pick one
but
of them.
Maybe that's
not Miller.
Maybe
Lite.
That's one of those ones where it's like the LA Lakers. Like they don't really have any lakes there, but that was just the old team. So I think the Milwaukee Brewers used to be the Memphis Brewers before they moved there. So maybe it's just that Memphis, maybe if he goes to Milwaukee, maybe he wants to check out some Memphis breweries in Memphis, Tennessee. So it could be one of those things.
Hey, I just Googled, there is a lakefront brewery in Milwaukee.
Well, every little dinky town has a brewery now.
Wait a minute.
So it would be. They're getting on a trend.
Lakefront brewery, and it's on a river. It's not even on the lake.
It's Wisconsin.
What a load of crap
we've got a grade on a curve here. Geography is not their strong suit.
It's freshwater, whatever. Doesn't matter. So yes, that would be my recommendation. Go to a brewery. That's always a good recommendation, no matter what. So, and then Chester, Bemidji must hit spots. I would say tunas, but that goes back to the old podcast when I told the story about when apparently I was made light of the fact that there is a adult entertainment dancing foray in Bemidji, and it's called Tunas, which I think is just, I don't know if it's still open, but Chester, I don't know if you can talk to the wife about hitting that up, but give it a shot.
I don't remember that when he brought that up.
Give me a report on that. So, also Bernovic and Thorson hype, 2 of the top 8 scorers in the USHL. Austin Bernovic was on the under 18 team and is playing for Madison, and I think he's leading the league right now, or he's up there in points. And then Gavin Thorson, obviously he's from Andover, made a big name when he was really in a 2-horse race for Mr. Hockey, when I think Shaughnessy won it, who is a Minnesota-Duluth,
like Shagaday or something.
Chagade? Sean not going to play for the Huskies, so I don't really care.
And I think you're confusing him with
it's-
Maple Shaughnessy, who's Boise State's top scorer. So,
oh, that's right, Maple. So, but it's the. So yeah, I mean that's where I was kind of at the beginning of the year I was like, Bernovic and Thorson, them coming. That's going to be might kind of be, as far as the freshman goes, and now seeing our freshmen kind of really expand and really play bigger minutes, bigger roles. It just gets me even more hype for Bernovic and Thorson to kind of come in. Thorson has signed his NLI, so he's a firm commit. Bernovic has not, so that's something that obviously with recent history makes me a little bit nervous.
Get that pen on the paper.
Yeah. So, but
they can always back out after they sign that, though. Too, it's just a piece of paper, right?
Yeah, and I mean, people lose commits all the time. So blue blood programs, quote unquote, they lose commits too, that they flip. So I mean, it's not, it happens, but those are two high profile, high scoring potential players that I really want to see in the Cardinal Black and really looking forward to. So yeah, my hype meter is off the charts. It was already pretty high with Thorson, obviously for what I've seen him, do in the Minnesota State High School League, but seeing Bernovic so far this season, putting the points that he has, I'm chomping at the bit to get him here.
Yeah, I think we mentioned Bernovic over the offseason as far as possible, freshmen when we were trying to sort all that out, incoming freshmen. And yeah, it didn't really light up the USHL with the under 18 team, the national team last year. But yeah, as we're seeing, he's breaking through this year. And yeah, as you mentioned, St. Cloud, our sort of, I don't know, insecurity, mine at least, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, but it's almost having too good of a year. It's just like I'm worried that the vultures will be coming out and scooping them up. We've seen it's almost to the point where we saw Denver freak out and bring in this USHL goaltender in the middle of the year. Can we do that with Bernovic? Like, just so no one else plucks him in this offseason. We can find some ice time for him. That power play could use some juice.
Power play could use a lot.
Yeah, bring him aboard. But I just hope that one's not going to get away. Same with Thorson too. I mean, but looking too with Bernovic, I mean, he's got like a pro build, 6'4". I mean, the kinds of numbers he's putting up this year with Madison in the USHL they're head turning. And it's to say nothing about Thorson, but a little bit more undersized and 5'8". With like Thorson too, I don't know. Like we're thinking about like comparison players. It's hard because I mean I've actually watched Thorson with the state tournament. Just a couple of games here and there, but still, it's more than I've seen of Bernovic, who I believe played at Tino Grace, but I don't have any recollection of watching him there, because I don't think they made the state tournament the years that he would have been eligible to play. But so I mean, with Thorson, I do have that experience of watching him in action, and I don't know like what the comparison with him would be, because he was a very hyped high school player, with then a prolific junior, at least so far this year. I mean, he's 27 points in 22 games, something like that, among the USHL leaders in scoring. It's almost like, I mean, Joey Bennett played BCHL, not USHL, but it sort of like brings that name to mind a little bit, where I mean, he was obviously, and he had a huge high school career, but it wasn't at like a huge program. He was at St. Francis versus Thorson at Andover.
I mean, we can go back to Ryan.
I was
Paling.
thinking Paling more so with Bernovic, but just based on like the size and sort of like the physical
size.
aspect
Okay.
with and I actually think Bennick was bigger than, or it still is. Bennick still is living, as far as I know. He's a little bit bigger, even though I when I was looking it up, like Bennick clocked in at 5'10", and there's still room for Thorson to gain some size. I mean, guys go through late growth spurt. It's possible, but I think that the physical and the skill set and the stat line kind of seems familiar to Bennick, whereas I was thinking like Ryan Paling for Bernovic, but we'll see how it plays out. It's nice to know that the recruiting hasn't let up really since Larson's took over the job, and even this year with a different mix of type of players. I don't think any of these players they brought in this year have the high of a ceiling that either Thorson or Bernovic has, but as we're seeing and we mentioned before, like they've been contributing in their own ways as well. So even in what you were thinking might have been not as flashy of a freshman class, it's still producing. It'd be really kind of interesting to see if this year's freshman core, as they grow older, how they play supplemented with more star power, potentially with these two players that we're mentioning. So it's really nice to think about the future. Both the men's and the women's side seems to be in real good hands.
Yeah.
And just crossing my fingers, knocking on wood. Let's get that NLI signed, Austin. Get the job done because I don't want another Gruba situation. So maybe just slow down the offense at Madison, go into a little bit of a slump, and then bobble back off.
Go into some because still no one with like a promising 6'4".
Oh no, yeah, Big Ten guys will be a little skittish after that.
Right, exactly. So, well, that about does it on this little 2-hour pod. Like I said, we'll work on getting some World Junior talk as David Carl and Brett Larson prepare for the World Juniors. So we'll get some information from Jake Baskin on that. So that'll be a good podcast to tune into and get his takes, as well as what he thinks about all the roster shakeups. So any last words there, Andrew?
Not much. I was going to ask you what you're going to watch this weekend because we've got a real light schedule. And not the best of pickings. But I will probably be watching RPI versus Mankato because I got nothing else to watch, really. That's like the only thing I can watch with my streaming services that I currently have. I got to watch Long Island and Vermont because they play Long Island games on ESPN+. Do any of those options sound appealing to you?
No. Not even in the slightest.
You can check out that Mankato game. Maybe Mankato can beat
Alaska.
RPI, and then that would help St. Cloud's pairwise, like very nominally. But usually with these like holiday weekends, we got some like one intriguing matchup, but no, we literally got nothing. So I'll probably will be watching that because I got nothing else to do. Yeah, I don't expect there to be a ton of compelling action this weekend.
We can scout the Bowling Green versus Bemidji.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you can if you want to buy your month of Flow Sports,
buy your subscription to Flow
before the Bemidji series. You can scope them out this weekend against Bowling Green because I'm sure you would have been impressed by their 6-1 home loss to the hands of Lake State Saturday. But I don't blame you if you don't. I'll put it that way. But yeah, that means that we'll have a lot to go over with Jake Baskin next weekend, and we're getting into World Junior season. I'm excited for it.
Perfect. So, for Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR More Clappers, Andrew, you could send him an email.
Yep, at Huskies Hockey Podcast at gmail.com. Or I'm also over there on the Green Ground at Andrew on greenground.net.
Anything sprouted over on Green Ground yet?
The seeds are still being sown, and
okay.
I've got some. They've got some invite codes. So I haven't posted yet.
They call them leaflets.
Yep, I haven't planted yet, but we call them plants.
Planted your leaflets.
That's what posts are. They're plants. So I haven't planted yet, but I'm planning to. If you want to join me over the Green Ground, greenground.net/Andrew.
All right, perfect. Until next time, go Huskies.
Woo!
Woo!